So some big news at Token 2049 coming from John Woods, who is the Chief Technical Officer of Algorand Foundation. He announced some big news about AlgoKit, which will be integrating pure Python programming. Now, this is a big deal because Python is one of the most popular languages around. It's taught in universities. It's one of the easiest ones to get into. I've tried a number of languages, and the only one that I can actually do anything reliably on is Python, because it's just easy to understand. It's still coding. Coding is still kind of hard, but I can at least do a little bit on there. So I think this is a huge deal. And so he goes into a little more detail. Let's take a look at that. Then we're going to talk about related nodes too. Let me share this. I have some John Woods video too, so that's always good. So here's what John Woods has to say about this. He says, think about this. Now, everyone who is familiar with Python, students, hobbyists, beginners, machine learning / AI engineers, data scientists, can build on Algorand without training and enterprise. Their existing teams now have all the knowledge they need to build great apps on Algorand. Algorand and Python, the game has changed. I like that. Is anyone better at selling Algorand and the technology behind it than John Woods? I just don't know if there is. So and this is a good question. So Algorand 411 says, great job like always, but I was under the impression that the current PyTeal was already very similar to Python. Can you please elaborate more on the specific advantages for going pure Python, please? Well, PyTeal is Python calls to assembly. This is just everyday regular Python. So that's, some of you might have been confused on that. I was maybe a touch confused on that too, but I kind of figured it out that it would be just regular old Python. So I assume you called like a library or something. I don't know. I'm very curious about that. Let's see. Phil asked about any cross compilers. I'm assuming you meant compilers and the offing from Rust to Python. We could create an avalanche. Cough, cough, over to Algorand. John says all possible now with our stellar architecture we built to enable Python. So that's really cool. That is coming with AlgoKit 2, I believe. So I think that's great news. I think Python is very, very useful. By the way, not the only announcement that John Woods made recently, because they also talked about removing relay nodes. We're going to hear from John himself on this. Well, maybe we're not. Hold on. I do have info for you, though. This was shared by Justin Bonds. Algorand just announced that they will remove relays. This is a big deal, a real commitment to decentralization. I criticized the relay nodes and suggested changes. Removing them works as well. I wonder how this affects TPS. The trade-off is worth it either way. Welcome to the club. This is interesting because someone says, what if relays became optional components, as in the network operates perfectly fine without them, but folks can choose how to route transactions when they need shorter propagation times, i.e. an entity could run a business where they offered folks the ability to connect through their node for a few. Preston says if the gossip network can bypass the relay nodes, it should be fine, as that means relay nodes cannot gatekeep anymore. The scenario that concerns me is when it starts to look more like XRP, where disagreement was so high a cost that everyone has to use a permission node list. Interesting. Let me just see if I can find, I know I had that video saved. Here's John talking about AlgoKit. I should have shared that first, but.
Which has some very special features.
Now what does that mean for the developers on Algorand, John?
We announced a tectonic shift in the experience of building apps on Algorand. We announced AlgoKit version 2.0, which has some very special features.
Now what does that mean for the developers on Algorand, John?
So, when we started AlgoKit, we recognized that we needed to change the developer experience in Algorand. Algorand is a decentralized operating system, effectively. And a great user experience starts with great dApps. So we need to help our developers build quickly and easily. We launched AlgoKit earlier this year, and it gives you everything you need to build, test, and deploy applications on Algorand. There was one bit I wanted to change, though. We needed an easier language. Today, we have changed the language of Algorand from Teal, which is quite hard to learn and quite expensive to build in, to Python. Folks will know Python because it's used globally, both as a teaching language for students to get their first understanding of how to program applications, but also by the machine learning and AI industries. It's one of the most popular languages in the world. By changing Algorand's language from Teal to Python, we not only make it much more inclusive so that there's millions of developers globally who will now just be able to pick up a keyboard and start writing apps for Algorand.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. But also, critically, this reduces the cost for go-to-market.
Okay, that's that. Apparently that cut off a lot earlier than I expected. So great news for Algorand. I think going to pure Python is going to be excellent. And great talk by John Woods. He's just one of the better spokespeople for Algorand. And it's funny because he's the technical guy. Usually, you don't think the technical guy is also going to be the best spokesperson, but in that case, they really got a rock star with John Woods, who I have interviewed on the channel. You can see my interview with him if you go to the live tab, or you just punch in John Woods Algorand, it'll probably come up. By the way, speaking of nodes that I mentioned before, guess how Algorand stacked up to other coins as far as running a node? This one comes courtesy blueflash.algo, node specs, Algorand versus SO versus HBAR versus ADA. Which of these can you afford to run? I probably couldn't even afford the electric bill on an HBAR node. And I say this as, by the way, I love HBAR, so don't jump on me about this. This is just comparing what it would cost to run a node. You need 16 gigabytes of RAM for this is Algorand's, and I wish they had. Okay, this is Hedera's. It's 250. I don't know, but those are all really big numbers. Here's Solana, and I'm just looking down. RAM 256 gigabytes or more. That's out of my price range. Now, I believe this is Cardano, right? That's only 24 gigs, so that's not too bad. But another 150 gigs of free storage. For me, that means pretty much a dedicated computer. 1 gig of bandwidth per hour. I think I get that. I think so. Anyway, clearly the least expensive one, probably the most accessible for most average people to run a node is probably Algorand. I think that's a really important point there, because I think the least restrictive version means more people can afford to run it. Who knows about the electric bill? I think it's probably high in all of them, to be honest, but probably much worse on the other chains. So nice to see that. That's a really interesting little breakdown of what it would take to run a node. I don't run a node for anything right now, but I would like to someday for Algorand, maybe. All right, now I promise some HBAR news is coming, and maybe we'll talk about the speed test next. Actually, we can talk about the stablecoin.